new year has barely begun and we're seeing widespread changes in the Russia-Ukraine war front. Kyiv and Moscow are making contradictory claims about the situation in Soledar, a town in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region. Russia has also replaced the general in charge of the invasion. This change comes barely 3 months after the previous commander took charge. As if to underline the Russian president's dissatisfaction with how the war is going, Russian state media released footage of Putin berating the Russian deputy prime minister. Our next report gets you all the updates from the war. Take a look.
Я знаю, что контрактов нет на предприятиях. Мне директора сказали. Ну чего вы в самом деле, дурака-то валяете? Контракты когда будут? Я вот о чем говорю.
That's Russian President Vladimir Putin losing his cool with the deputy prime minister of the country, as the war in Ukraine enters its 11th month. A conflict that Putin thought wouldn't last this long, and adding to his frustration, Russia seems to be on the back foot. Since Ukraine began its counter-offensive in September, Russia responded by shelling Ukraine's critical infrastructure. The Ukrainian energy grid has been left in shambles. But Russia has been expending weapons and ammunition to sustain its relentless barrage. And Moscow needs to replenish its equipment stock. Apparently, this isn't happening as fast as Putin would like. And that's what led Russia's deputy prime minister, Denis Manturov, earning his ire. Listen to the exchange that was released by the Russian state media.
У нас есть контракты и по, как я доложил, по Министерству обороны, и по гражданской линии, и ГТЛК, и другие лизинговые компании. Это в части вертолетов. А по самолетам у нас все сверстано. Это с учетом тех испытаний, сертификации и программы импортозамещения суперджета МС-21.
Денис Валентинович, у вас сверстано, но контрактов нет. Ну что я же вам говорю, ну давайте я вам сейчас после закончим совещание, чем мы с вами пикироваться будем? Чего вы мне ответите? Я знаю, что контрактов нет на предприятиях. Мне директора сказали. Ну чего вы в самом деле, дурака-то валяете? Контракты когда будут? Я вот о чем говорю. Ну, нет, директора предприятия говорят, нет контрактов. А у вас все сверстано. Ну.
This scathing admonishment took place on a video call attended by government officials. Reports say that the very public rebuke may have been a way for Putin to assure Russians that he shares their frustrations. Russian commentators have been seething after the New Year's Day attack on Makivka. It resulted in the largest number of casualties that Russia has acknowledged so far. Moscow says 89 soldiers died. Ukraine claims it was much more, between 400 to 600. Many of the casualties were conscripts from Russia's recent mobilization drive. Putin didn't just stop with the dressing down of the deputy prime minister. He also changed the general in charge of the Ukraine war. Moscow has appointed Valery Gerasimov as the overall commander of what it calls the special military operation in Ukraine. He is the chief of the general staff of the Russian armed forces. He replaces General Sergei Surovikin, who had just taken over in October. Surovikin will stay on as one of Gerasimov's deputies. Reports say the move allows Russia to make Surovikin the fall guy for the recent setbacks. Meanwhile, on the ground, Russia claims to be making gains. The Wagner mercenary group says they have captured the city of Soledar in eastern Donetsk region. Ukraine says the fighting is still going on. Kyiv has released footage allegedly showing its troops holding out. Soledar is a small salt mining town about 10 kilometers away from the city of Bakhmut. The battle for Bakhmut has been raging for weeks, and Russian control of Soledar may help it seize the city. Satellite images show the extent of the damage in both Soledar and Bakhmut. A major factor behind the assault on Soledar is that while the win on ground might be marginal, it would be a big symbolic victory. A victory that Russia has not seen in a while. Taking Soledar and then Bakhmut could be used to invigorate Russian troops and public opinion, and help Putin silence his critics, as well as maintain his strong man image.
And for more analysis, we have with us Glenn Diesen from Oslo. He's a professor of international relations at the University of Southeastern Norway. Thanks for joining us, Glenn.
My pleasure.
My first question, and I'm quoting, "Why are you playing a fool?" Those are some strong words coming from the Russian president. Is this a sign of how the war is progressing, according to you?
No, I think, Russia will have some problems, and this is not the first time that Putin will scold someone in the top of the command if he believes that, they have not fulfilled their tasks sufficiently. But overall, I think the war has shifted clearly in Russia's favor. You just discussed Russia now taking Soledar. This is quite important. This effectively punches through Ukrainian defense lines. So not only is Soledar important, but this allows Russia to develop a pincer movement against Bakhmut, but also in the north, possibly developing a pincer movement against Siversk as well. So there's now talk about Ukraine having to pull back, creating new defensive lines further to the west. So overall, I think there's a lot of indications that the war is going Russia's way now. Especially, quite evidently, as the West now begins to escalate in terms of sending more heavy weapons in order to shore up the Ukrainians. So I think, but of course, mistakes are made. Russia also has its problems, everything from logistics.
Right, so this change of general, is that just for optics? Is it just a cosmetic change?
It depends. I memean, Moscow explains that there's a need to what it calls a raised operational command level. In other words, General Surovikin will continue to do much of what he's done the past 3 months. However, the argument from Moscow is that General Gerasimov will add another layer above Surovikin because they argue that there's a need for closer coordination between the various branches of the army. In other words, over the past 3 months, General Surovikin has been fighting a war of attrition against, Ukraine and /NATO. However, now the war is entering another stage as Russia is planning a major offensive. And if you have a greater involvement of Air Force, naval forces, and the army on more front lines, you need to restructure some of the logistics. And simply put, this is the argument. This is why General Gerasimov, as the top general in Russia, has been arguing that he needs to take over control in this stage.
Right. Glenn, just a final question there. How do you then, you mentioned the region of Soledar and how crucial it is. How do you explain the contradictory claims about the situation in Soledar?
Well, this is not the first time there are contradictory claims, my informed opinion appears to be that Soledar is almost completely taken. Several hundred of Ukrainian forces appear to have been trapped inside Soledar as the Russians had this pincer movement where they surrounded much of the city. And in addition, on the western part of the city, there's salt mine number 7, which isn't completely in the control of Russia yet. But it appears that the city is more or less under the control of Russia now, and they're also going westwards towards the neighboring settlements. So I think there will be confirmations within the next day or two from also the Ukrainian side that Soledar has been lost. And this is my expectations, or how I read the situation at least.
Right, Glenn, thank you so much for all those insights. Thanks for joining us on WION at this hour.
My pleasure.
WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.